looking specifically at psychoanalytic theory, this whole balance, this kind of like tug of war, there's the ego, there's the id, and there's the superego, right? The superego deals with shoulds, shouldn't, supposed to, this, that, and the other, and the id is just fucking impulsive and just wants to experience pleasure and destroy, right? And then the ego has to be like, all right, listen, you fuckers, what's going on here? I just think it's so interesting, like we're in every day of life, in every moment of life, we're pulled between these different things, and it's just so fascinating to me how this dynamic unfolds. But looking specifically at like the superego, right? The superego is the shoulds, right? You should do this, you shouldn't do that. People make decisions based on those things, right? And very oftentimes, somebody maybe they want to experience pleasure, right? And the it is like yeah, 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 and then the super ego is like hold the fuck down, just chill out. And then the ego is like, all right, what do we do, right? And it's so interesting when you look at psychoanalytic theory, and then not only that, but the like defense mechanisms that come with it and everything. It's so fascinating, like you could be in denial regarding something. The evidence is clear. It's there, right? But maybe you're only in denial because you learned that defense mechanism from like a parent or guardian or something like that. The things that we learn, the ways that we choose to approach life from either a conscious or unconscious standpoint, it's so interesting. I'm also fascinated how people make decisions because they're afraid of the potential shame that could come with it. But this is really because they overvalue other people's opinions and they undervalue their own, right? Like somebody might make a decision that's really not beneficial for them, but because the superego is like, well, if you don't do it, then there's going to be a lot of shame coming from the people around you, right? They're going to shame you. You should not have done like it's so interesting. So we base our decisions around, you know, the superego that wants to steer us in this direction of what is deemed acceptable by society, what's right, what's not right, what you should and shouldn't do. It's just so fascinating. And we all have this, right? And we all kind of conform to different standards. We conform to different ideas of life and everything. Um, it's just so interesting because we created this. Of course, psychoanalytic theory itself came from Freud, but, like everything. I I came up with this quote, I guess you will, the other day, and the quote basically said, "Every problem that man has ever had has been created by him." And it's so interesting because, like we look at the way that the individual runs. We look at the way that the society runs. We look at the way that all these different systems run. And every single thing that we've ever experienced has been created by us. Everything, I understand that some people might be like, well, God did this, that, and the other. I'm talking about what we have, our perceptions, the ideas that we've created for things, like it's so interesting how it all works. And like when you look at it from afar, it kind of looks like man has created this thing for and of himself, but at the same time has locked himself inside of it. Like we are at a point in our evolution, I believe, where we are waking up and we're realizing what we've done to ourselves, as well as the planet in general. And there's just a lot of really interesting insight that comes with that because, you know, every problem that man has ever had has been created by him. That's the reality of it. Like every way that we have interpreted things, every check mark that we've given to things, it's been on us. Everything has been on us, right? No matter how much you want to deny something, if the reality is the reality of what the reality is, yeah, that was kind of mind-boggling, then it is. It is what it is. So to deny is potentially absurd. If the reality is what the reality is, and that's what the reality is, again, weird and mind-boggling, But if it is what it is and you want to deny that, what kind of fucking tug of war is there going to be with the ego in the fucking middle between this super ego and this id, right? Like, the super ego is pulling you in the direction of, you can deny it all you want, but it's not true. And then the id is just this fucking savage beast that's on fire that just wants to feel pleasure and destroy everything, right? It wants that instant gratification, and then it needs this sense of guidance to understand, well, if you wait, you can get more, you know? And it's so interesting, and then that's, of course, where delayed gratification comes into play. This stuff is so interesting. And the way that it shapes the way that it shapes a human being is also so fascinating. You know, the superego, the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, that in and of itself was also created by us. It is so interesting.